Have you seen them? Those videos popping up all over social media of women asking a pretty simple question: where did all the chivalry go? Well, today we're going to dive into a pretty provocative answer from one source, and we're going to break down their entire argument piece by piece. All right, so here's our game plan. We'll start with the online complaints that are kicking all this off. Then we'll get into the source's big explanation for why it's happening. After that, we'll look at their idea of a societal trade-off, a really surprising class angle, and finally, a conflict they see between our ideas and our desires. So first things first, what is actually going on here? Well, it's this whole new genre of video that's just exploding online. It's women documenting these moments out in public that leave them feeling, frankly, a little shocked and pretty disappointed. A lot of these complaints really center on a basic lack of help. The source material points to clips just like this, where there's this feeling of total disbelief, like, how could three grown men just stand there and watch someone obviously struggling with a huge suitcase and do absolutely nothing? And it's not just about heavy lifting. Another really common theme is this feeling of competition. Instead of a guy maybe offering up a seat, the stories are about being in a literal race with men for basic stuff, like an empty spot on a crowded train. At its heart, the frustration seems to be about this feeling that some kind of unwritten social rule has just been erased. The videos are full of this genuine outrage that men would see a mom with 3 kids struggling with a stroller and just walk on by like it's not their problem. So, the million-dollar question, why is this happening? Now, the source material we're looking at today says these aren't just random acts of rudeness. No, they offer a very specific, big-picture reason for this entire cultural shift. And here it is. The commentators in the source material, they argue that what these women are experiencing isn't an accident at all. They say it's the logical, completely predictable outcome of decades of social change driven by feminism. Their whole point is that expecting chivalry today is like trying to use a rule from an old board game that nobody plays anymore. They claim that chivalry was part of an old social contract, one that was, in their view, intentionally taken apart by feminist movements that wanted to free women from those exact traditional roles. Now, to really get their argument, you have to understand how they define chivalry. For them, it is not just about being polite. Not at all. They see it as a whole system of behavior that's built on a very specific belief, that women are, fundamentally, the weaker sex, and therefore require men's physical help and protection. Okay, so if you accept that definition, it leads you straight to what the source calls a massive societal trade-off. Their argument is, you can't just go to the buffet of social models and pick and choose only the parts you like. So here's how they frame it. In the traditional model, the benefit for women was special consideration, social privileges. The price you paid? Less financial and professional power. Now, in today's model, the benefit is huge, independence, high income. But the cost is being treated as a direct equal, and, by extension, a competitor. And this, right here, is the absolute core of their argument. The source is basically saying you can't have it both ways. You can't demand the social protections of the past while also enjoying all the economic and professional freedoms of the present. You just have to pick one. But the analysis doesn't stop there. The commentators add another really fascinating layer to this whole thing. They argue it's not just any women who are complaining, and they point to what they see as a very clear class dynamic in these videos. The source makes a really specific observation about the women making these videos. They're often described as high-earning professionals. The commentators point to things like expensive clothes, perfect makeup, and manicured nails as visual clues that they're from a higher socioeconomic status. And the men in these videos, well, they're described in a completely different way. The source portrays them as looking working class, simple jeans and t-shirts. They speculate these are guys who work tough, manual jobs, and they even describe them as looking kind of depressed or sad. So this observation leads them to a really provocative theory of class inversion. Their argument is that these professional women now represent society's new upper class, and they're expecting the old forms of deference from the working class men that they have now surpassed in both income and status. So this all builds to the final point from the source, a deep, fundamental conflict between what we say we believe and what we might instinctively want. On one side, the source sees these complaints as proof of what they call a biological desire, a really basic human wish for men to notice them, to pay attention, and to offer assistance. But then you look at it from the other side. They argue that men are now operating under a completely different set of rules, ideological rules. And after years of being told this, a man might hesitate, thinking, if I approach her to help, is she going to see it as creepy? Am I going to get accused of something? So the source frames this whole situation as a fundamental clash between two powerful forces. You've got these biological imperatives, a want for those older, traditional dynamics, fighting against the ideological imperatives of a modern world that has totally rewritten the rules of engagement. And this brings them to what they see as the great paradox here. The woman in the video desires an outcome, chivalry, but her modern ideological beliefs are probably opposed to the very system that created it in the first place. And in the end, the commentary leaves us with this one very powerful question. It suggests this online debate isn't just about bad manners. It's a moment of reckoning with the unintended consequences of huge social change. And it asks all of us to think about that gap between the world we build with our ideals and the world we actually, deep down, want to live in.